We'll be going over IRS Notice CP11A. So this is a change that was performed to a tax return and because of the earned income tax credit. So it took me a while to find this, but I did have it on my list of notices to research. So after kind of doing that research, I was able to find an older copy of this notice. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the top part of it. I'll kind of explain some of the redacted fields, and then we'll go through step by step everything that you should know about this notice. So let's go ahead and go to the upper right hand corner. You'll see the notice number, CP11A, the tax year, the notice date. I always tell people that they should pay pretty close attention to the notice date because if you're requested to do something, and in which case this is requesting that the taxpayer owe a certain amount of money, then you have a certain period of time from the notice date. So usually when there's a payment notice, that's 21 days a notice, and you see that this August 30th due date is 21 days from the notice date. So as we go through this form, we might see some other kind of ties to the notice date, but I always tell people to pay attention to this. And then the other thing I usually tell people to pay attention to is just their taxpayer name and an address to make sure that it's accurate. So if your address is not up to date and the IRS sends you correspondence, they don't care if you respond later because your notice got hung up in the mail. You know, from the IRS's perspective, it's the taxpayer's responsibility to update their address. Usually when you file your tax return, that's an automatic process. The IRS will take your new address if you put one on your most recent tax return, and they'll update your tax record. If you're in between tax returns, then you can either call the IRS, validate your information, and then make that change over the phone. Or if you don't want to sit on hold, you can file the official change of address notice. So for individual taxpayers, that would be IRS Form 8822. For business owners, that's IRS Form 8822-B. So this redacted information is the location of the IRS office. I'm not sure why that's redacted. The rest of this generally is dollar amounts. So you can see all of these fields. These are redacted dollar amounts. So let's walk through this and kind of see what we can interpret. So the verbiage over here says that there was a miscalculation based on your earned income credits. So the IRS made changes, and as a result, you owe some amount of money. And then here's a breakdown of the tax that you owed, the payments that you may have made, any failure to file penalties, any failure to pay penalties, and then interest charges. At the bottom is a payment voucher. So if you're going to make a payment on this via check or money order, then you should make your check or money order out to the United States Treasury. You should write your social security number, the tax year, and the form number on your payment. And if there's any correspondence that you want to include with your payment voucher, put that information on your correspondence as well. When sending your payment voucher, make sure that you send it to the address on the payment voucher, not necessarily the address on the letterhead. Sometimes they're the same address, but I've seen notices where these are two completely different offices. So again, if you send payment to the wrong office and the IRS doesn't process it in time, it only comes back to you. So just kind of follow the steps, mail your voucher to the correct location. So let's take a look a little bit more closely. All right, so if you agree with the changes, blah, 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 there are payment options. You can do an installment plan. Some of them you can do online. Above a certain dollar amount, then you need to file what's known as IRS Form 9465. That's the installment agreement request. And any of these forms that I mentioned in this video, we'll put links to resources that we've created in the show notes. So we'll put links to videos and articles that we've created about those forms. So if you don't agree with the changes, you can call the 800 number that's been redacted, go over your account. You can contact the IRS by mail. You would use this contact information voucher and then attach any correspondence to it. You can enter your phone number and a time for the IRS to call during business hours. So if you contact within writing, again, 60 days of the date of this notice. So we go back to the notice date, which is at the top of this page. So 60 days from that date is what you have to contact the IRS in writing. So if you're not able to provide additional information to justify any reversal, then you will have your tax return forwarded to an audit, to the audit office. And so in that case, you can't expect an audit if you contact the IRS and you disagree with their assessment, but you don't provide any additional information, then they're going to give you an audit that allows you formal appeal rights, which includes the entirety of the appeals process. So certain parts of the appeal process, you can go to tax court. So all of that to be said, if you do present a difference of opinion to the IRS, do make sure that you provide as much additional information about, in this case, the earned income tax credit to justify this. If you don't give enough information for the IRS office to change their mind, say, hey, you know what, we'll go ahead and accept this, then you can't expect an audit. So if you don't contact the IRS within 60 days, then the change stays and you have to pay the additional tax. You can then file for a refund after that. You would have to submit a claim within 3 years of the date that you filed the tax return or within 2 years of the date of your last tax payment. So basically you can pay the tax and then you have to file a claim for a refund. Let's see if there are any additional steps the IRS recommends here. So I don't see anything here. Here's a justification of why the earned income credit was changed. It appears that a social security number or tax ID number, last name or date of birth was not correct or it was missing. And then there's something here about a personal exemption. So we're at the time of this recording, personal exemptions are not allowed on tax returns. However, the earned income credit is. So this basically says that your information didn't match the information that's in the Social Security Administration's files. So this would be a good time to check with the Social Security Administration. You should be able to either quickly rectify this by making sure that everyone that you claim the earned income tax credit for does have a valid Social Security number. Then you can go ahead and state your difference of opinion as long as you're able to validate that Social Security number. So then this also goes on to explain that if you have a dependent with an individual tax ID number or an ITIN, that might be because they don't qualify for a Social Security number, but that's also a requirement for the EIC. So if you can obtain an ITIN for someone, that allows you to file your tax return. In current circumstances, you'd be able to claim some tax credits for that person, but not the earned income credit. So we'll put links in the show notes to the Form W7 resources that we've created as well. So in this section, kind of go the calculations that appeared on your tax return, the IRS recalculations, and then payments and credits. Here's a kind of a summary of failure to file penalties, failure to pay penalties, and then how you can remove penalties. So there are a couple ways that you can remove penalties. All of them would be on IRS Form 843. That's the claim for refund and a request for abatement. So there's a program called First Time Abate where the IRS will allow virtually any taxpayer to remove the penalties if that's the first time that they've incurred penalties related to a tax return. You can also file for abatement based on reasonable cause. So that's kind of this section right here. If you had an economic hardship, if there's a natural disaster, a death of a family member, all of those could constitute a reasonable cause situation to remove or reduce penalty charges. And then finally, if you requested written advice from the IRS and you gave them all the information, you received the written advice, you followed it, and then the IRS came back and penalized you, you can also remove penalties based on that. So here is a breakdown of interest charges, usually by quarter, and it looks like, that's the case here. So, in this quarter in 2008, the interest was 6%, then it was changed to 5, then 6, then 5, and then, so this is how they have calculated interest in the past. So there's not really an easy way to abate interest. However, any penalties that are abated will result in a recalculation of the interest charges. So you're basically removing a penalty and then you're removing any interest related to that penalty, even if you still have to pay interest on the outstanding tax. And then on this last page of the notice, there's some additional information about resources. There's a note here about if you owe $100,000 or more, then you owe your payment within 10 working days of the notice date. If it's less than $100,000, then it's 21 days, calendar days. So let's go to this link here just to see if we missed anything. So this takes us to the CP11 notice. This is CP11A because this specifically was tied to the earned income credit. But basically, same thing applies. A CP11 notice is that the IRS believes that you miscalculated your taxes, they made changes, and as a result, you owe taxes based on the changes that the IRS made. So here are links here to some frequently asked questions and other resources such as IRS publications on how the IRS tax withholding process worked. And again, some frequently asked questions in case there's one that I didn't cover in this video. So let's go back to this notice. And I think that kind of wraps things up. So like I said, we'll put links in the show notes to any of the articles and videos that we've created about some of these forms mentioned here. So if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or comments, or if there's another topic that you'd like to see a video on, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.